Hey, everybody. Really exciting topic today about unlocking the power of advanced communication networks with Shabodi. Vikram, how are you?
I'm doing great, my friend. Pleasure to be here.
Pleasure to have you here. Happy Friday, everyone. And this is a topic near and dear to my heart as someone who's watched the evolution from 1G or 0G actually to 5G over the decades. You're doing really exciting work. Before that, maybe introduce yourself and your mission at Shabodi.
So Vikram Chopra, co-founder and CEO of Shabodi. If I think about it, let me add, say, a non-business lens to it. Shabodi is probably the culminative journey of not just myself, Harpreet, my co-founder, CTO, Ramesh, our president, and actually anyone in our company, whether it's investors, advisors, or key employees. All of us have, I would say, long careers in telco. Some of my colleagues, even me, I always joke I'm still the relatively young gun on the team, but between all of our key team members, there's several decades of experience just working in the telecom industry. So, as you said, you mentioned, right, 1G to 2G, we're at 5G, we're already talking about 6G. There's been an evolution. And so, a lot of it, some ways, the body of work we've all done over the last few decades kind of brought us together for this mission of Shabodi.
Well, it's a wonderful journey. And maybe start by explaining your mission, your platform, an application enablement platform. What is it and how does it sort of enhance network aware applications?
Sure. And before you do that, let me kind of take you to the timeline, right? Because this
Mm,
whole 1G thing, right? What does a G really mean? So if you think about it, what 1G gave us, what I call was the smartphone. Now back then, the phone was bigger than my face. And I always joke I've always had a bit of a Pac-Man head, minus the intelligence. But it allowed you and I to make cellular calls. What was 2G? Well, 2G gave you the ability to split voice and data. What that meant in English is, well, a bunch of very intelligent people out of Waterloo built a device called the BlackBerry that allowed you and I to send and receive encrypted emails. Palm did the same. If you think about it, so what 2G really did was transform and enable for the first time a truly mobile workforce. I can on the go send and receive emails, send SMSs, communicate in real time. Change how we work to communicate it today. 3G took it forward. Now, I went to college in the early 2000s. So I kind of remember I wanted off internet, I had to go to the local radio shop. I wanted my Microsoft Office, same thing. Wanted my QuickBooks, and I put it to something called a CD-ROM. So if you think the revolution that 3G brought in, we didn't have smartphones, we didn't have tablets, like you said, smartphones, desktops, and laptops. But any on-premise business application can be now downloaded to an internet-enabled device. In some ways, completely dinosaured the CD-ROM. Now we go to 4G, and let's put it this way: Zoom, Uber, Netflix, DoorDash, Skip the Dishes, just naming Instagram, Snapchat, just naming a bunch of applications that probably kept us mentally occupied during the pandemic. That was a revolution for us. So you take something like Uber. What and it actually applies kind of like what Shabot did. What made Uber so successful? Because a 4G and LTE network gave you the ability to get on-demand geolocation data. And a bunch of smart engineers at Uber was like, hey, can I take that network and create an application that allows users to call a taxi on demand and track it in real time? And then now again, it's about how do you enable network services? Well, the problem was back then, and the killer use case for this was push to talk. Whether I'm Uber, whether I'm on say Lyft, Skip the Dishes, DoorDash, push to talk, push to SMS was a killer use case. WhatsApp did the same thing, but the problem back then was, holy, if I'm on WhatsApp and jumping onto a call, or I'm an Uber and I want to communicate with my driver, am I on a T-Mobile network? Is it a landline? Is it SDN? Is it long distance? Is it voice over IP? Is it a local T-Mobile land, but then I'm actually calling someone in Europe that could be a British Telecom? The point is, there was a lot of complexity. And a company by the name of Twilio is like, don't worry about that. Don't worry about if it's an AT&T network, a T-Mobile network. Don't worry about the operator anywhere in the world. Just integrate Twilio's very simple APIs. And now you WhatsApp user can do push to call. Now you Uber user, you can call directly your taxi bed or send them a message. That's exactly how I call what 4G did. It made streaming, on-demand geolocation real time and enabled a whole bunch of useful services used today. Which brings us to 5G and why 5G is so critical. 5G represents something called network programmability. Now, network programmability didn't actually begin with 5G. It actually began with something called Release 14 Advanced LTE. What network programmability very simply means, I'll give you two examples. I'm going to give you a very basic, simple consumer use case example, then I'll give you an enterprise example. Let's take someone at home. You and I are right now on this video call. Let's say I'm doing it in the office today, but let's say hypothetically I was doing this at home. My wife also is in the mental health industry, so she does a lot of online sessions. She's also on a Zoom call. Babysitting my nephew. So let's say he's watching Netflix. So I would say in terms of network priority, my nephew, because if he can't watch Netflix, no one's getting peace. Then let's say, you know what? My wife, let's say her Zoom calls. The point is the internet network is finite. Now, you know what? The good thing is my nephew needs the internet for the next 3 hours, but my Zoom call is actually at 1 o'clock. My wife's at 2 o'clock. Is there a way to tell my network, can you prioritize the network traffic at 1 o'clock for Vikram's online call? And then at 2 o'clock, do the same. And in parallel, whatever network resources, prioritize it for my nephew to watch Netflix. We can't do that today. Now apply that in a manufacturing setting where you've got thousands of devices and sensors that are 5G enabled. You've got basically robotic assembly lines. You've got AGVs, and then you've got technicians walking around with laptops and iPads where they're getting a real-time view. How does the network know what to prioritize in real time? So this is the beginning of 5G, and a term we call network programmability is that, okay, in real time, can the network be programmed? Can the applications tell the network in real time what I need at that specific instance? Without that, it's what we call something called best effort. You're guessing, okay, I think these robotic arms need X bandwidth. These AGVs sitting on the side, I would say they need this much latency. You're guessing it, great. But in a real-time environment, when everything's going from the network, even though you're dedicating and you're assuming that this robotic arm needs X bandwidth, does a network even have resources to give them that level of network coverage? We don't know. So this is what happens is either your network's going to crash or going to keep deploying more and more radios and expanding your network, which gets expensive. And it's one reason why the industry struggled to find the ROI. So that's where you said the value isn't in 5G being a bigger pipe. The value is that's an intelligent pipe. So that same robotic arm, that's, let's say, assembling a vehicle. That robotic arm ran out of a part. Now there's 20 AGVs sitting idle. All of a sudden, can we task 2 AGVs? One's going to go to point A, pick up a part, and deliver it to point B where the robotic arm is waiting. If that robotic arm doesn't get that part, well, we're going to have to shut down a production line. Costs us business, costs us productivity. We're behind schedule. We're going to lose revenue. So can we in real time, so okay, robotic arm needs bandwidth. In real time, can we prioritize latency for that AGV to deliver that part? Just for the next 20 minutes, once it delivers the part, we can give that network resource back to a different application. So the ability to do that in real time is what 5G provides. Now, the only thing I'll add is that network programmability is not just restricted to 5G, obviously LTE, but even non-3GP standards such as Wi-Fi and even satellite network programmability. So the challenges today is networks are multi-vendor. So it could be an Ericsson network, could be a Nokia network, could be a hybrid. In an enterprise, it's usually hybrid, where you can have a core from one vendor and a radio from another. So networks are multi-vendor. All of them provide their own APIs. So if a developer builds an application on one network, how does he assume that the application will work on a different network? Number two, networks are not just 5G, especially in manufacturing, mining, it's hybrid. For at least for the next decade, you're not going to see too many pure play 5G networks. For example, in manufacturing, it's a combination of Wi-Fi, 5G, and LTE. Most of the deployments we've seen are hybrid. So hey, in that same network, can I assume my network-aware application works on Wi-Fi, 5G, and whatever network? And three, the network might be the same, but multi-operator. So if I'm a manufacturer, I might deploy my network with one carrier in one region, but in a different part of the world, it's a different network. Can the applications be consistent? And then the fourth piece, I'll talk about standardization. You've got 3GP, you've got Camara, you've got GSMA, you have TMForm. All of them in their own ways are trying to find some level of standardization. The problem is for the end developer, this is way too complicated. So what Shabodi is simple, and we're the first to market, we've been doing this since 2020, is we provide a very simple, trivialized APIs, very similar to what Twilio did a decade ago to the end developer. Now the developer doesn't care. It's a 5G network, it's Wi-Fi, it's satellite. Is it a vendor network with a specific core radio combination or a different networking configuration. 3, I'm not, irrespective of the standards, I build an application on Shabodi, now it'll work across the board. That I would say is kind of like the challenge and opportunity industry and what Shabodi is specifically solving. Does that make sense?
Yeah, very well said. Really intriguing. So you're bridging the gap between application developers and network engineers, typically two different camps who didn't
Correct.
necessarily talk to each other. You're doing that through APIs. And so what's happening behind the scenes in your platform and your technology? How does that work exactly?
Well, I always like the bugs. It's funny. I was having dinner with my grandma yesterday. So trying to explain to my grandma what I do was an API, that too in Hindi and Punjabi. It was quite the job. So it's very simple, right? I gave my grandma the comparison of a restaurant. The chef is the network. He's cooking something up. The consumer is just the person's order. Someone's ordered a nice filet mignon. I need a quality of demand API to power my robotic arm. Well, the waiter, the one who delivers the services, is the API. So if you think about it, we've got these very complex networks. And as you said, historically, developers have built applications in a vacuum, irrespective. They just take what the network gives you. Now, for the first time, that developer can build an application that can dynamically request network resources from the network. Latency, bandwidth, packet flow, security. There's whole, like, in some ways, latency bandwidth is a term we all understand. With 5G, there's up to 20, 30 different standards and protocols you can manipulate in real time based on the application. So if you think about it, Shabodi really is that magic wand. It's kind of like the Harry Potter world. We can teach you to use magic, but you still need that magic wand to actually tap into magic. Think of those Shabodi APIs as that bridge where the application developer can tap into the power of these programmable networks, but he doesn't have to be an expert. And why this is critical is that, yes, there are companies in the world, whether if you're someone from a Cisco or a Nokia or a Dell, you'll probably understand networks and applications. But you're an enterprise. Your bread and butter is you build seats for some of the biggest manufacturers in the world. You know manufacturing, but you're not necessarily a networking guru. How many engineers would you have to have on staff that can both understand networks and applications? And then they might be experts in one network. Hey, this guy is an expert on any Nokia core. So-and-so's are really good on any Samsung radio. But do you have a developer who knows all that skill set? So either you're going to have teams of developers, hundreds of developers trained on both applications and networks, and then you're manually hard coding, or you use something like Shabodi that takes care of all of that other complexity. Another example I'm giving, which is a non-telco example, is Square and Stripe. 15 years ago, if you're a payment engineer, integrating payments was a nightmare. I mean, it was a great income for a lot of payment engineers because you had to integrate the MasterCard API. You had to integrate the Visa API. You had to be PCI compliant. A lot of complexity. Square and Stripe came on and said, don't worry about that. Integrate our 3-4 APIs. We will take care of all the integration, all the upgrades with any payment vendor. But now, if you're an e-commerce store, you can enable online payments in hours, if not days, before it would take weeks, if not months.
Wow, it's a mic drop moment there. So you talk a lot about manufacturing, where the benefits of network-aware applications, as you call them, are pretty profound. But there must be many other use cases in different industries and verticals, different use cases. What are you seeing there outside of traditional manufacturing requirements?
So yeah, definitely manufacturing is, I would say, an early adopter for
Mm,
5G but the adoption's been slow because in manufacturing, it's not just a network. You've got a lot of legacy equipment. So as manufacturers start becoming more and more automated, you'll have the need for 5G. But that's why I would say it's a need that's emerging, but it's not fully there. But I'll give you some other. So basically, if you think about any industry that requires a certain level of automation and is whether deploying drones, AGVs, and more robots. And I'm
mm,
not saying the robots replacing the human. For example, in the mining industry, it's like, you don't want to send a human into a mine again because unfortunately
mm.
there's a human cost if there's a life, but more importantly, if, for example, if you lose a life in a mine, the mine shuts down for years, if not indefinitely.
Wow.
So there's a major economic but human cost. So we're not saying let's get rid of the miner. They're saying, okay, can a miner sit above ground, control an AGV 30 kilometers down into a subterranean mine? So driverless vehicles, but the driver is still controlling it above ground. That's another use case. And that's, again, where you need these kind of programmable networks. Another use case that I really like is actually emerging, and this is an example of hybrid networks, is in stadiums, right? So a lot of stadiums, it's a use case working on, you have a sports team. Let's say in this case, it's a racing car. This stadium's got a private network. It's a public. They've got Wi-Fi, 5G, and satellite. Because the problem, when you got 30,000 fans, they're all streaming. They're ordering food. There's a lot of load on the network. But when these race cars, they're doing their race, they come into that pit, they have 30 seconds for the data uplink and downlink. How does a network know, okay, over all of the internet traffic at that moment, how do we prioritize in real time that for those 30 seconds, the quality on demand? And we've got a 5G network, we've got satellite, we've got Wi-Fi. Maybe whichever network is available, can you prioritize those resources for that at that point? Because the race, and more importantly, the human safety of the car, vehicle, all that is critical. So this is an example of one use case where it's multi-vendor, multi-network, where Shabodi adds a value. Another one, actually, I'll go back to the mining vertical, is simple, right? There's a lot of heavy level automation in mining. So when you have a vehicle in a mine, and this is something we've seen, when a driver sitting above ground controlling an AGV in a mine, he actually has to count till 3 seconds. Reason why he's counting 3 seconds, because that's the latency lag.
Wow.
He's kind of say, hey, my little AGV's in a tunnel. I needed to go right. 1, 2, I'm going to turn 1, 2, 3, because that's what he's assuming. Now, can you use these programmable networks like 5G with Shabodi's ability to prioritize the network traffic in real time to solve that problem? Because that's how you can deploy a fleet of autonomous or driverless vehicles in a mine site where the drivers above ground are controlling it. Another use case we've seen, again, in both, this applies both in a mining and even in a port setting, is the use of drones. A drone in a mine site has many use cases. Surveillance. The trick, though, is when you're deploying more than one drone, it's in the telco world what we call best effort. But when you got a fleet of these and they're all doing different tasks, how do you prioritize a network in real time? That's where you need some kind of intelligence APIs that Shabodi provides. So that's another example where we're helping certain sites deploy multiple autonomous assets in real time without it having to be best effort.
That's an amazing example. Many incredible success stories there. And, talk about the commercial side. Obviously, there's more value than just the operational efficiencies you bring. You also talk a lot about accelerating 5G monetization, something that's been kind of slow to materialize, and, helping with business, commercial outcomes. Maybe talk about those as well.
Sure. But let me talk a little bit about the ecosystem, because it flows into that. Because if you think about it, 4G was to consumer, 5G and these programmable networks are to enterprises. So in a lot of it's kind of funny, right? Because so a lot of carriers and operators have invested tens of billions of dollars into spectrum. And so you're not going to get that ROI by getting you and I to get 5G enabled phone, just because there's not the use cases and applications aren't available today. I would say in a couple of years in gaming and maybe online retail, you'll see that trend. But right now, the use cases are in the heavy industries. The challenge is that an enterprise doesn't want a network. He doesn't even want Shabodi. But hey, Mr. Enterprise, you've got a digital transformation strategy in your smart mine. And over the next 3 years, your plan is to add a higher level of automation for human safety and more productivity. Well, to do that, there's a whole bunch of, it becomes from a digital transformation to industrial IoT play. Well, to enable both your digital transformation, industrial IoT, well, you're going to probably need more sophisticated networks. You can't do this with, say, just a basic 4G LTE network. Well, this is where you need 5G. This is where you need Wi-Fi 6 and 7. And then you need something like Shabodi as the glue. So what we found is that for the last couple of years, the industry, the big guys, tried going on his own. The problem is no one player can completely own the 5G value chain, because if you're part of the, I'd say, a digital transformation initiative for any customer, whether it's a mining, in manufacturing, oil and gas, port, is that you're going to need an operator, because the operator is going to provide you the network. Then you're going to need a network provider. It could be a Cisco core and a Samsung radio. It could be a Druid core and an Airspan radio. And third, you're going to need a system integrator, an Accenture, a Deloitte, or a Booz Allen that's actually going to help deploy the network. Fourth, you're going to need an application developer. In this case, it could be, let's say it's a computer vision application. So a partner of ours, great, is Intel OpenVINO. or maybe it's a autonomous vehicle from John Deere. The applications are going to have to be refactored. And where Shabodi comes in, they're actually we're the glue that brings it all together. And when you bring all these parts together, you deliver a complete end-to-end solution for the customer. We're like, now, oh, that's why I need 5G. Because if I'm going to deploy a fleet of unmanned vehicles in my warehouse and I don't want the robots to go on a predetermined path, and this is actually a problem in warehousing today. If you notice any warehouse, you'll see these smart robots, they're on a predetermined path. The reason why they are is with Wi-Fi coverage, the only way they can guarantee that coverage is by on a predetermined path. The idea being, hey, if you can combine both 5G and Wi-Fi in a warehouse environment, the robot is now wireless. But for the robot to be wireless, the network isn't infinite. So in real time, you still need the ability to program the network based on the runtime needs of the application. And that's where Shabodi comes in. So this is kind of like how our go-to-market model is. We spent the last 4 years just building an ecosystem of partners in all these categories. And this is how we then go into an end customer. We deliver them a complete end-to-end solution.
Fantastic. And your engagement across the industry spectrum is really impressive. I'm just looking through your social profiles. You just got back from the TM Forum in Denmark. Would love your feedback from that event, hot off the heels, I think a week or two ago. You were at a T-Mobile tech event. You're participating in various CPaaS forums. Exciting times look like for Shabodi. How do you see yourself in this whole new emerging category? And what else can we expect from you over the next couple of months?
No, and if you highlight two very critical events, I'll start with the first one, the T-Mobile Hub event. And thank you again to T-Mobile, my co-founder and CTO, Harpreet. So we always joke, he's the geek. My nickname for in the office is Grandmaster Yoda, because it's a rare skill set for someone who's basically navigated every journey from literally 0G to 5G. And that's Harpreet. So the T-Mobile event was talking about network programmability. And I'm glad we're doing that because for the past 4 years, we've been saying 5G, 5G, 5G. But what is 5G? It's just a network. But it's a network that could be an intelligent asset which can leverage correctly to deliver solutions. So what I like about it's TM Forum or T-Mobile Hub, we're finally not talking about networks, we're talking about solutions. Why should you care as an enterprise for 5G? You shouldn't, unless it can solve an actual business problem. So at the T-Mobile Hub, it was a really good showcase for us to showcase to the market how different players, whether it's Nokia, T-Mobile, Postman, Shabodi, we're all coming together to enable these services for the industry. Same with TMF Forum is where the operators are realizing is that for our enterprises, we have to enable new services. These are new revenue models. How do I do that and go beyond just selling you 5G phone? And then so there's a lot of initiatives also realize that for us to deliver the promise of 5G, we need a certain level of standardization. So this is where I laud, whether it's TMF Forum, GSMA, Kamara, is all these initiatives coming together where we need to provide some level of standardization across the API stack. The only challenge I'll see in the industry is that we've got lots of initiatives that sometimes cooperate, but they're still a little siloed. And this is where I think the small role that Shabodi is playing is that we're that endpoint. There's a lot about CPaaS. The challenge with CPaaS today is CPaaS provide you voice and communication APIs, but they don't solve the problem for cellular network. But Shabodi, combined with CPaaS, can deliver that promise of network APIs. Same thing with Kamara. It's a great initiative. It's getting the operators on a single table. But for enterprises to leverage Kamara, this is where we come in. We're an actor contributor in Kamara. Actually, at Mobile World Barcelona a couple of months ago, we announced the first reference enterprise implementation for Kamara APIs. So anyone that's built, say, a quality demand API can leverage that across any operator for any enterprising using Shabodi's API. So that's kind of like where it's excited. We're seeing lots of these initiatives. And so it's actually good because the industry is coming together. And I'll actually suggest you check out a really good white paper. And I kind of want to steal the thunder, but there's actually a great white paper written on this topic by Dean Bubley on CPaaS versus network API. So I'd encourage everyone to check it out. It was a co-sponsor with us and Shabodi, specifically talking to this topic and how Shabodi fits in this value chain.
Well, certainly a great follow-up to this discussion. And as we enter the summer, I'm guessing things aren't quieting down for you and the team. Normally, a little bit of a quiet period. You have your plate full, but what are you looking forward to? Not just the summer, but the fall season. We've got Mobile World Congress, Las Vegas, and all kinds of meetups and get-togethers. What's on your radar?
Well, we're excited. So as I said, TMF Forum was really great. It was a very intimate setting to just connect with the industry's work. And as I said, what's exciting is that now the industry is coming together and focusing on the solutioning. We're no longer talking about the hype of these networks. We're like, what can actually be done? And I think over the next 6 months leading up to Mobile World next year in Barcelona, you're going to see a lot more solutioning. And stay tuned for some announcements we'll be making with our partners as well. But yeah, and then how do I keep myself busy? As I said, scale up life. I sleep on a plane. So the good news is my body has now been programmed, my own internal APIs where I can sleep on any flight, any plane. Because basically, we're across all time zones and geographies.
Well, that's a superpower. And of course, you can get to anywhere in the world from Toronto with almost one flight. So it's a great place to be these days. Thanks so much, Vikram, for sharing the vision and the mission. And it's really amazing to hear it unfold. Appreciate the time and the opportunity to chat.
Evan, an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.